Let us chant Namo Tassa to start with. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. Let us go all the way down to the sutta. So the sutta should be in page number 111. Page 111. That is page number 6 from page wise. The Discourse on the Root Teaching. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Blessed One was staying at the foot of the royal sal tree in Subhaga Grove, near Ukata. Then the Blessed One addressed the monks, bhikkhus. Venerable Sir, the monks answered the Blessed One in assent. The Blessed One said this, I will show you, bhikkhus, the exposition on the root of all things, on the root of all things. Listen, pay close attention to it. I will speak. Now, the root of all things is a quotation which is used not in English, but of course in Pali throughout the Tipitaka. The root of all things, which is Sabba Dhamma Mulapariyaya. Sabba Dhamma Mulapariyaya, Sabba Dhamma. Dhamma, we know the doctrine, but here it doesn't mean really doctrine. It literally means all phenomena, or the world itself actually, right? The world itself. So Dhamma, as you would know, has many different meanings and can have or can be used in different contexts, with relating from diverse contexts as relating to the doctrine, to phenomena, to the universe, to the world, to the samsara, right? So it is used in a wide variety of contexts. Listen, pay close attention to it, I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the monks answered the Blessed One in assent. The Blessed One said this, the ignorant ordinary person, the four elements. Here, bhikkhus, an ignorant ordinary person who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who has no regard for true persons and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, perceives earth as earth. Having perceived earth as earth, right? Now here, perceived, the word perceived earth as earth, this is using or referring to the word manyana, right? Referring to the word manyana. Now, manyana is somewhat like an illusion, right? A creation of one's own thoughts and one's own conceptions, right? So seeing the world, remember, in the sutta that we did concerning the views, right? Concerning the views, we spoke of a similar attribute of a man who is ignorant, who perceives the answer to his questions or the answer to different questions that might be relayed by his own knowledge to an extent that he understands by his own meager knowledge, right? Which is again a Mandana, right? Which is a creation and illusion, right? So there are three types of Mandana: Ditti Mandana, Avijja Mandana, Ditti Mandana, Tanha Mandana, right? Which is to say, everything that one would, if you would take Tanha Mandana, I'm sorry, not Avijja Mandana, Mana Mandana. Tanha, Ditti, Mana, Manyana. This is to say, the Buddha says, greed, hatred, greed, delusion, and any sort of views that are referred to as Manyana, this is to say, Tanha, anything that is clung on to is a visual illusion that one has created by one's own thoughts, one's own conceptions. There is no true bond between A and B, right? To say, for example, let's go to a very basic example. You already understand this, I believe. Let's say now you like tea in your, it is very British, it's very Sri Lankan. Of course, the British got it from Sri Lanka or India. So it's so it's more Sri Lankan. We like tea, right? Tea is a part of your morning ritual, right? Some people go to the extent, if you don't have your tea is a bad day, right? Now that Tanha Manyana, there is no such thing. But because of the belief, you create a whole disturbance depending upon that Tanha. That is what a Manyana is. It is a creation of mind. Yes, dear.
Bhante, I'm sorry, Bhante, to disturb so early. But Bhante, my understanding was here perceive is Sanjani and Manyana is conceive. Later on they explain because there is a conceiver and a perceiver. So perceiver is Sanjanati and the
Please, we will come to that. Yeah, we'll come to that. Right? Now, having perceived earth as earth, right? Now we are going on to the next page. He conceives himself as earth. He conceives himself in earth. He conceives himself apart from the earth. He conceives earth as mind. He delights in earth. Why is that? Because he lacks full understanding, I say. He perceives water as water. Having perceived water as water, he conceives himself as water. He conceives himself in water. He conceives himself apart from water. He conceives water is mind. He delights in water. Why is that? Because he lacks full understanding, I say. He perceives fire as fire. Having perceived fire as fire, he conceives himself as fire. He conceives himself in fire. He conceives himself apart from fire. He conceives fire as mind. He delights in fire. Why is that? Because he lacks full understanding. Because he lacks full understanding, I say. He perceives wind, air, the same repeats. Now, this is in relation to the elements, right? This is in relation to the elements. Now, the elements being a part of a greater scheme of things. What is the greater scheme of things? you and me, the things that we own, the houses that we live, the earth that we tread on, the air that we breathe, the fire that we use to cook, the meals that we eat every day, the petrol that fuels our vehicles, everything, right? Everything. These creations of man are creations that are brought about by because of the existence of the elements. The elements, regard we not being able to, of course, see it at an elemental level, we see it as it appears to be. And through our views and because of attachment and other causes, we cling on to and attach ourselves into or with, not no, we attach ourselves to these sort of different things that we have in our life. This, as we progress in the sutta, it will become clearer where it would now mean or now say that we are unable to properly see between something that we use to, something or tool that we would use to perform something, rather than just leaving it at the state of being a tool, we use it or bring it up to a state of being mine, being a part of me, being an extension of me, not just a thing that is a part of a more colossal mechanism, a structure which helps in the process of life, right? This is the first route that we sort of go into the elements, into seeing that these elements that have been portrayed, right, we cling on to these things, and also the elements create sensations. The elements create sensations, the feel of a thing. Now if we are to take synthetic leather and leather, the feel of it, we know how it feels like, we know the difference. We of course prefer the more authentic, the natural leathers, regardless of the harm it brings, out of the question, but we of course prefer and we see this of higher quality, right? We know the feeling that it brings, we cling on to again through the elements, we also now go on to the feelings. But thing is, these feelings that are created are all a part of what? The pancha upadanas khanda, the five aggregates of clinging. The five aggregates of clinging, like the building blocks, like the blocks that form the walls of a house and the base of a house, that is what forms the block and base of our lives, right? Because what are we if not for the clothes that we wear, the houses that we have, the things that we all decorate our houses and lives with? What are we if not for all of these things? Oh, that was a good phrase, actually. Oh. That's a question mark, really. It just does sort of numb you in a bit. What are we if not for our husbands and our wives? What are we if not for the places that we live in? What are we without all of these ornamental decorations around us? Quite scary, actually. Let's go back to the sutta. Yes. He delights in the wind. Why is that? Because he lacks full understanding, I say. Moving on. Beings and gods. He perceives beings as beings. Having perceived beings as beings, he conceives beings, he conceives in beings, he conceives from beings, he conceives beings are mine. He delights in beings. Why is that? Because he lacks full understanding, I say. He perceives gods as gods. Having perceived gods as gods, he conceives gods, he conceives himself in gods, he conceives himself apart from God, he conceives gods are mine. He delights in God. Why is that? Because he lacks full understanding, I say. Right? Full understanding, I say. Now, all of going from the elements onto the beings, onto the gods, onto the jhanas. Now we have the jhanas coming up. He perceives Prajapati, right, as Prajapati. Having perceived Prajapati as Prajapati, he conceives Prajapati, right? He conceives Prajapati. He conceives himself in Prajapati. He conceives himself apart from Prajapati. He conceives Prajapati as mine. He delights in Prajapati, right? He delights in Prajapati. Now, what is Prajapati? Now, Prajapati is referring to, right, Brahma, right? Prajapati is referring to the Brahma, the god, as a main form of Hindu Brahmanism worship, right? That is what Prajapati refers to. That is what Prajapati refers to. And then why is that? Because he lacks full understanding, I say. He perceives Brahma as Brahma. This is referring to Mahabrahma, mind you. Having perceived Brahma as Brahma, he conceives Brahma, conceives himself in Brahma, conceives himself apart from Brahma, conceives himself, Brahma is mine. He delights in Brahma. Why is that? Because he lacks full understanding. Now, important thing to raise as we now go from Brahmas, from other people to Dhyanas is, remember that the Buddha's full scope of teaching enables one to attain Nibbana. Right? That is the end goal of the Buddha's teachings, Nibbana. All of the other, which is categorized as something of a more petty experience when compared to Nibbana. Right? This is not talking about, for example, if we are to relate to, for example, Brahma, Prajapati, even the elements, even the gods and beings, right? We know that people go to refuge to these different beings, to these different people. And as a result, they invoke some sort of happiness in their lives. Invoke some sort of happiness in their lives. Now, this sutta, as we go on, this is not to say that happiness is fake, right? It is not to sort of push away that happiness. But remember that this sutta is talking or is preached with the full scope of Nibbana at heart. If one is to detach oneself completely in promoting oneself to a stance where one is able to achieve and attain Nibbana, that is where the framework of this sutta comes from. But regardless, we know that clinging on to any being or any form of phenomena for our derived happiness is a fool's attempt. Because as we depend on these different beings, now, for example, it is as if Jesus Christ, after Jesus Christ,
listen to this,
after Jesus Christ was nailed, and then sort of, according to the story, the story, after he was put into the cave and closed and all of that, people have still been waiting for Jesus Christ or God to come into the world. That is what Catholicism is waiting for. Jesus Christ to come, judgment day to come, for the people in the graves to wake up and go to heaven. Right? People are still waiting. Each and every day, the pious ones are still waiting in hope. We are waiting in hope of that ultimate happiness to come to us, to be judged. In Buddhism, we know that is not the life path that we believe in or follow, right? We follow and believe in true sake of a nirvana that we give rise to through the present moment. However, we might say this, although we might say this, our practices are somewhat very much like Catholics in many ways, right? Not to put the Catholics down in any way, but it is like that. How? The practice of merit, for example, right? The heaven and hell, or rather just focusing on heaven for the moment, is like that promised land that the God has promised to the Catholics after Judgment Day. The Bhavanga Chitta, the Chuti Chittas have become Judgment Day, right? That is how now we live our lives, with the anxiety of being judged, or by the sort of the adventure, or rather the gamble of the Chuti Chitta and the Bhavanga Chittas. That is what we tend to focus on. This is not Buddhism, right? That is adopted Catholicism, probably from after the English colonized Sri Lanka and these Asian countries. Something happened to our heads, you know. Right? This is not Buddhism. In the Buddhist practice, as we go on, now you see, right? We started strong in the Mulapariyaya Sutta. We started very strong indeed. We started from the Mahabhutas. The Mahabhutas that create each and everything that we love, hold, and cherish, right? Including your husband or wife sitting next to you or listening to this. That is also Mahabhuta, right? Sometimes we call them Bhutayas. Dil, you just called him a Bhutaya, didn't you? Oh my gosh. All right. Which is all then Mahabhuta. We started strong, but it is even we started strong because that is the main thing which hinders our growth. This attachment that we have to the life we have created. But of course, in true practice, we are unable to dump everything, right? And then sort of, we have responsibilities and duties. You have your grandchildren to go and see, and, all of these other things that you have to do. You have to live a life. But the thing is, in saying so, we are unable to differentiate between living life and living life with understanding. We often see these things in two paradoxes, which shouldn't be. You live life, but with understanding on the same parallel level, right? Life and understanding, wisdom should always come there. So then, that is where then the Buddha moves on in the Mulapariyaya Sutta, just in the beginning. Just in the beginning, it moves on to now the devas and the beings and the brahmas and all of these people who we often go for refuge in. Who we often go for refuge in. Now, as a Buddhist, if someone is to now, for example, if you ask the Muslims, they have their community. The Catholics, they have their community, right? The Hindus, they have their community. Should the Buddhists be having a community? For the sake of legal reasoning, of course we do, Buddhists are Buddhists. But in true practice, Buddhist community is humanity, including the animals, the pets that we have, to every being. Why? Because in the doctrine, the Dhamma, I remember Mohanlal Grado, he used to always say, Dhamma is the truth of the universe. He used to say with the R sort of persona, so he said something like truth, right? Our managing director at Lyceum. He said truth. Dhamma is the truth. True. Dhamma is the truth. Truth of not me and you who are Buddhist and worship at the altar of Buddha. Truth to each and every man, woman, dog, cat, being who lives under the sun and the sun itself. So Buddhist community is really, there is no such thing according to true Dhamma. There is no such thing, because our metta should be pervading in all directions, regardless of any barriers of skin color, heritage, all of this. That also comes to seeing myself within the community, seeing the community in me, just as we have followed along these parts of the Brahma and the beings, right? Brahma and the beings, seeing myself apart from the community, conceiving myself as the community, conceiving myself in the community, and conceiving that community to be mine. Because as long as that community is yours, you will not be obliged or pushing yourself mentally to remove yourself from it. Right? To remove yourself from it. Let us move on. This sutta goes into, this sutta is, I think, if for a preacher, it is one of the most easiest suttas to actually teach in a preacher's perspective. Why? It can be bent in so many ways, and it is sort of a culmination of everything. That is why, because you can bend it in any way that you possibly want, and yet it is a part of the sutta. It is such a broad, complex sutta in that way, right? So I think you all have also done this with Venerable Kassapa, and some of you probably also with Venerable Ariratana, isn't it? Probably. So probably Bhante Kassapa also. All right, so let's move on. The Dhyana attainer. He perceives Prajapati as Prajapati. Having perceived Prajapati as Prajapati, he conceives himself in Prajapati, right? Oh, no, we did that, and then Brahma. Okay, so now the Dhyana attainer from the first jhana, right, which refers to that parallel plane, right? The beings in that parallel plane, right? And then we go into the second jhana. Now look at this also. Now there is a lesson here also, right? Now the first jhana, Prajapati, right? Going on to Mahabrahma. Now we know and have heard of Sakra, right? We consider Sakra to be great. I have even heard, you should, Sakra is put in such a high state, just like one would not speak ill of the Buddha, one does not speak ill of Sakra. Right? Why is that? Why is that? Because it is closer to the plane that we live in. In comparison to the planes of existence, Sakra is a very, very weak deity. Here, the first jhana, the Mahabrahma, the main focus of worship of the Brahmin religion, the first jhana plane. Why? It's the closest to us. You go beyond, there is no speaking of the Abhasara plane beings. We learn about the Abhasara plane beings and those beings after that through the Buddhism. Because why? Too far away. Too far away. Right? The beings who have achieved and attained the first jhana talk about a God that they have seen in that plane. Again, look here. What is that? Again, that attachment to see the through, because of that attachment, we fail to see the bigger picture. Right? That attachment has kept us grounded upon a script. But if we are able to see beyond, then there's something greater, much, much more glorious, something more peaceful and blissful, and something far enormously great than what we thought was the truth. Right? There is a lesson there as well. The second jhana perceives the gods of Abhasara, streaming radiance at the gods of Abhasara. Having perceived the Abhasara gods as the Abhasara god, he conceives the Abhasara gods. He conceives himself in the Abhasara gods. He conceives from the Abhasara gods. He conceives the Abhasara gods are mine. He delights in the Abhasara gods. Why is that? Because he lacks full understanding. Because he lacks full understanding. Then we go on to the Subhakinnaka. Again, the Mamayana, we call this the Mamayana, right? Myself, 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 taking it as mine, mine, conceives himself. Because if it is something good, we have to in some way or the other, cling to it and make it something that is yours, right? Then we go on to the fourth jhana, Vehappala. The gods of Vehappala, having perceived Vehappala gods as the Vehappala gods, conceives the Vehappala gods, conceives himself in the Vehappala gods, conceives himself a part of the Vehappala gods. He delights in the Vehappala gods. Why is that? Because of lack of understanding. And then the overlord, similarly, going on to the formless spheres, similarly as spheres of infinite space, infinite consciousness, right? Neither perception nor non-perception, showing that even at that level, still there is. It is a tricky situation. Everywhere that we tend to go on to, we seem to be sticking on to it, holding on to it. That is our most inherent nature. That is our most basic inherent nature. We cling on to anything that is sort of dangled in front of us. We roll from birth to birth, clinging on to different things. Only Kamma knows the route that we have gone through. It has taken us into different worlds. Yet we seem to cling on to it again and again. When we are in the Deva plane, we are not bothered by these petty humans. When we are in the human realm, we are not bothered by anything else than our families and the areas and places that we live in, and how we sort of try to sort of envelop our own lives and sort of create something for our own selves, right? From birth to birth, this continues on and on and on, you see. Even when your mind is at a state of such great ability as to have the sense of neither perception nor non-perception, still that happens. Moving on, the four modes of perception. Page number 116. He perceived the scene.
115. Are you just run through it? Because those have got theory of infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, and perception.
No need to go through all of that. Yeah, I mean, we know the sense of it's the same repetition. All right. The
So
four
one state.
modes of perception. He perceives the scene as the scene. He perceived the scene as the scene. He conceives himself as a scene, conceives himself in the scene, conceives himself a part of the scene. He conceives the scene is mine. Then the heard, the sensed, the cognized, right? Sensed and the cognized. Now, in all attributes of perception, perception is as vijnana, right? Without perception, consciousness does not arise. Perception works primarily through the senses, which allows us to see, hear, smell, taste, and do all of that. To all of these things, right? To all of these things, this is what we seem to cling on to. If we like what we see, we want to make it ours. If it is a living or a non-living, an animate or an inanimate object, it's the same thing. We want to make good things or have people who say good things around us. We want to taste good things. We like that. It makes us feel good. It comforts us. We like to listen to good things. We like to smell good things. But when it is the opposite, when it is something which is repulsive, when it is something which is not, when it is something which does not satisfy us or does not speak to our taste, or when it is something which does not sort of boost my ego, if it is something which is aggressive, then we want to run away from it. Although it might not affect you, yet you are not exactly appealed or attracted to that certain thing. Just like we see the same thing on social media, right? Same thing, how children or people who are on social media, how they are controlled by it, how markets and all of these things can be controlled by this aggressive advertising which is put on your screens as you sort of scroll through all of these social media outlets. Similarly, these things which are pleasant and unpleasant control each and every part of your daily life, right? If someone decides to wake up in the morning and be bad to you, your whole day is gone. It is human nature. But what the Buddha instigates is knowing wisdom is greater than everything else. Knowledge that this is the way these things work is greater than anything else. Having the visibility over these perceptions. Now, in the VTs, we learn how these perceptions are cognized, how these perceptions are processed, right? We know now, we know how what these perceptions as mental factors and consciousnesses are made up of, right? Really, it is as if we, there is not much of difference between us and mechanical robots in a certain way. The only thing is we are far more advanced than the robots are. But we have mechanisms that run so well, but yet we are very, very similar to those robots. We have a certain algorithm. The algorithm is the tanha, ditti, mana, right? The good and the bad, the perceptions which are pleasant and unpleasant. This is our algorithm. And the people who control our lives know it. Now, even in politics, you break up the different demographics of people, right? You know, of course, in Sri Lanka, we know the Buddhist monks are very close to the politicians. Why? Not because the politicians are pious and, are people who are waiting to attain Nibbana. Because when the Buddhist monks say yes, there's a whole group of people who will follow in that path and say yes. Different demographics of people are tackled because why? When we look from in an unbiased way, we know how to press a button to do or get that person to do what we want, right? This is something which is a part of the world. The Buddha, recognizing this is why the Buddha then says, do not cling on to that which is pleasant or that which is painful. Be open to this rhythm of going through pleasure and pain because it all arises and passes away. Now, having this wisdom, you can live unaffected by the algorithm that has been placed upon us, that works by nature. That is in a way to sort of bring yourself to a situation where you can have a sustained form of happiness. That is what we say, isn't it? Nibbana, paramo, sukha. Right?
Nibbana,
The,
Parama Sukha.
the Nibbana is known as the highest bliss, right? Not because of anything else, not because it is like sugar, not because it is like molasses. It is because it is the more sustainable form of happiness which does not go or bend to the influxes of the mind. That's the reason. It is not to say that compared to eating a cupcake, a very good cupcake, mind you, eating a very good cupcake, a very good bakery eat, compared to Nibbana is petty. It is not in that way. Of course, we are taught in that way, but it is not in that way. This is talking about sustainability. This is talking about prolonged happiness. This is talking about also, now in even psychology, if a person is happy all the time, right, it is seen as, or it would be rather diagnosed as a part of depression, right? It is unnatural for a person to be always happy. Manic cheeriness is a psychological illness that you have to get treated for, right? If you're smiling all the time, laughing all the time, right? Saying that I'm laughing, I question myself sometimes. I blame it on the devotees. Anyways, so in that way, we'll go back to the sutta, right? We'll go back to the sutta. All right. Seen, heard, sense, cognized. Now, the senses are okay. Cognized. What is cognized referring to? Cognized would refer to all including the data processed through the five sense doors and also the judgments caused by as a result of that perception, right? As a result of that perception. For example, let's take a very basic example. You see a person, that person does not appear to you as a person who is good, right? We cling on to that data and we do not move away from it, right? We find ourselves rather stuck in that place. Now, that is an example of what this, or clinging on to that which is cognized, is. Also, this includes the habits, the characteristics, the personalities and traits that a person would have, right? would have. Now see, this is when we go through these things, you should realize, seeing the Dhamma as it is presented here, it is not an easy task, right? Attaining Nibbana can be quite challenging for one reason and one reason only. The only challenge, according to what we have been going through, remains to be our inability to let go, our inability to adopt a higher sense of knowledge with integrity. Right? Now, all of you, there is no one here who would dare say that this is wrong, is there? No, there is no one here who would say so. All of you would say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu to this text and sutta. Of course, rightly so. Although we all would say that, are we with integrity beholding the values upon which this sutta is taught? Question mark. Right? That is because, again, not because of anything else. It is not personal. This is again that algorithm. What? We fear letting go. Right? The ones who are mature in their years, the best excuse, too old for this. Right? The focus should be, yes, some of you are saying no, but yes, that is reality. When it comes to, people think, okay, maybe that can be done next life, but this life, let us at least get the Bhavanga Chitta right. Let's at least try to get that hoop right, so that we might be able to continue, right? But in reality, actually, if we are able to go into a position, a state of mind through utmost dedication, conviction, and belief through wisdom, we don't even have to be bothered about the Bhavanga Chitta really. It is not something which is to concern yourself about. The Bhavanga Chitta is actually, that concept is quite weak. Too weak in the sense, not to say it's not true, weak in the sense to the greater scheme of things. Right? There is so much more. Remember what the Buddha has said. When he was teaching Rahula, he took the sand, he said, is this time, right? Is this sand which is greater, the sand of the world or the sand on the tip of my finger? The sand of the world. It is the sand of the world is like the time that you will spend in samsara. Should we not? So why are we bothered about the ending to this? We are now bothered about throwing this sand away, right? When we, in reality, we are going to be rising and passing away, rising and passing away, rising and passing away. Hell is going to be inevitable, mind you. If we, there are people who are engineers here. If you calculate the statistics, right, of us literally, if we have that amount of time, right, and if we are to calculate the probability of us ending or going to hell at some point, there is going to be a point. There is going to be a point for sure. We already have been there for sure for a long time also, right? What do? The thing is, we are focused on this small grain to protect this small experience, while the proper thing that our focus should be on is actually the greater scope, which is Nibbana. The greater scope, which is Nibbana. That is what we should be focusing on, right? Moving on. The modes of personality, personal identity. He perceives unity as unity. Having perceived unity as unity, he perceives. Dil, can you read this, please?
The modes of personal identity. page number 116. He perceives unity as unity. Having perceived unity as unity, he conceives himself as unity. He conceives himself in unity. He conceives himself apart from unity. He conceives unity is mine. He delights in unity as identity. And why is that? Because he lacked full understanding, I say. He perceives diversity as diversity. Having perceived diversity as diversity, he conceives himself as diversity. He conceives himself in diversity. He conceives himself apart from diversity. He conceives diversity is mine. He delights in diversity as an identity. And why is that? Because he lacks full understanding, I say. He perceives the all as all. Having perceived the all as all, he conceives himself as all. He conceives himself in all. He conceives himself apart from all. He conceives the all is mine. He delights in all as an identity. And why is that? Because he lacks full understanding, I say. He perceives nirvana as nirvana. And having perceived nirvana as nirvana, he conceives himself as nirvana. He conceives himself in nirvana. He conceives himself apart from nirvana. And he conceives nirvana is mine. He delights in nirvana as an identity. And why is that? Because he lacks full understanding, I say.
All right. So here, now this part of personal identity, it gravels on two modes, right? The first, unity, we have unity. And then we have diversity, which is unity refers to, unity is the quality of the dhyana, right? Unity is the quality of the dhyana. It is the oneness of mind, right? It can be taken as the oneness of mind, the place where one is able to bring one's mind into a single fold, right? And then we have diversity, right? Then we have diversity, which is then the spread of the mind through many sort of objects or in many sort of levels. This can also be sort of seen as nanatta. Nanatta is a diversity of persons, right? Diversity of persons and the single fold nature of persons, right? Single fold nature, which is the unity, which is the single fold nature of persons. And then we have diversity, the nanata, which is the nature that variety, the difference between people, right? This is again something, a thought, a pattern that we often tend to be sort of relishing in terms of attachment, or sort of clinging to it in different ways, right? Now, with regards to all and nirvana, right? With regards to all, this can be the idea. Now for this, right? Now I want you to come to it. It is actually well explained in the footnote there. Let's go to that footnote 46, right? All as all, sabbang sabbato. The all from the all. In this section, all perceptions of personal identity, right? No, moving down. Tanisaru makes an interesting observation here. Although at present we rarely think at the same terms as Sakya philosophers, there has long been and still is a common tendency to create Buddhist metaphysics in which the experience of emptiness and unconditioned, the Dhamma body, Buddha nature, Rigpa, etc., is said to function as a ground of being, from which the all, the entirety of our sensory and mental experience is said to spring, and to which we return and when we meditate. Interesting point, if you understood that, right? Interesting point, if you understood that. The entirety of, some people think that these theories are the inventions of scholars without any direct meditative experience. but actually they have most often originated among meditators who label, or in other words, of the discourse perceive, a particular meditative experience as the ultimate goal. Identify with it in a subtle way, as when we are told that we are the knowing. That is so, so, so very true. Years and years into meditations, we tend to very much cling on to different experiences, even those experiences that we gain of meditation, right? Even those experiences that we gain of meditation. And now our whole practice, regardless from the form of nibbana, comes to be, or comes into the focus of the meditation itself, right? Which then is false, isn't it? Right? Years I have personally seen with my little experience, people for years clinging on to the nimittas. For years, people cling on to the very subtle piece of samadhi, which is not even jhana sometimes. Often clinging on to just anapana, right? Not wanting. You see, anapana, right? Then we know that there are a few high stages that some of you have experienced where the body disappears and all of that, right? But the clinging to anapana, the observing of the breath gets so strong that what happens? Now, even when you go past certain stage, you bring yourself back to the base state. You keep yourself there. Right? In the same way, Vedanupasana, Chittanupasana, the same thing happens. It happens way, way too often. Right? That is why even through the practice that we have been doing, we have not really been sticking to one, rather focusing on the ability to, one, develop our personal qualities, which is the wider life that we lead. Two, to be able to go into states of samadhi, to go into states of samadhi through different meditations that we are able to do in the same respects of nibbana, or more than nibbana, actually at the present point, the understanding of anicca dukkha anatta. Right? That is what we have been focusing on. Why? To avoid that unnecessary thing happen. Sometimes I have come or spoken with people who have taken offense when teaching something other than anapanasati. Again, why? That hardcore attachment. In Sri Lanka, anapanasati is what is taught usually almost everywhere, right? That attachment does not allow people to progress, right? Does not allow people to progress. So we must remember, the meditation or meditating is not our aim and goal. It is the result of which will allow us to see, one, anicca, two, dukkha, three, anatma, leading towards nibbana. Right? Leading towards nibbana. Anitya, dukkha, anatma, through the little that we have covered already, allows us to let go. Allows us to let go, to free ourselves. To free ourselves slowly, but it will happen. Right? That is what the plan, the goal is, right? So, right. Then nirvana as nirvana, nibbana, nibbanato. Literally, nirvana from nirvana commentary says that nirvana here refers to the 5 kinds of supreme nirvana here and now. Parama ditta dhamma nibbana. Of the 62 grounds of wrong view listed in the Brahmajala, nirvana identified with the total enjoyment of sensual pleasure, or with each of the 4 jhanas. Craving causes one to enjoy this state or to lust after it. Conceit causes one to pride oneself as having attained it. Views make one conceive of the illusory nirvana to be permanent, pleasurable, and also self-abiding. Now, remember, how Nibbana is often categorized, right? Which I also used the categorization just moments before. Supreme bliss. Again, in totality of Dhamma, it's wrong. Because why? Lays a foundation for attachment towards bliss, right? Lays a foundation in our mind to the attachment of bliss. Then what do we do? Now that is where it is as if me trying to tell you how to balance between that point where samadhi is at the right point where you don't fall asleep. It is like me attempting to explain that step to you. It is very difficult to explain that balance where one should have. Now, because when we would say, okay, because it has been, I think all of us, including myself, we have all been in that state. We have all been in that position where we have in some way criminalized pleasure. So we have gone through a state and stage of sort of removing that, and we have grown comfortable to the different sort of displeasures in certain way, right? Now, for example, now um, if we would take a example that I would, a basic example, but this also speaks volumes. Ego, right? Let's say making a poster for the Dhamma Center Dhammadeshana with a photo of a monk, right? Then some don't like to do it, or some don't like to sort of put it up there. But you see, in these countries, you have to put and introduce someone, you have to put up a name. You can't say someone from that part of Sri Lanka, right? So then some would say, no, put the center name or something like that. That also reflects now it is not only not doing it is not the lack of ego. That is the ego which is even more dangerous, right? For example, learning Pali and learning Abhidhamma gives you scholastic ego, so we will not learn it. Now, the problem is not your ego. The problem has been made to be the Pali and the Abhidhamma, which is again wrong. And that is even worse. That is worse, right? I remember our teachers used to always say in Burma, right? They used to always say, there was this monk who used to always, he was always advise us, and he would always say, doing something, wanting to do something which is wrong. He was referring to food and drink, and he was referring to these things. Yeah, he was clinging to something, right? Can sometimes be better than pretending to not cling on to something. In Kamma, he used to say, defying yourself, the mullah is far worse than actually taking something and eating something or doing something. The pretending, the mullah is much, much more worse than actually doing it. So you rather just do it. He used to always say. Because when we remember the rotting of the log, remember in the Daru Khandopama Sutta, the simile of the log which flows through the Ganga. The Buddha takes it as an example, and he says, inside when it rots, it sinks. And even if you bring it out, there is no use of it, even to whatever. It's no use, right? That rotting starts when you start to, that mula starts. The rotting does not start when you do something bad. The rotting starts when you start pretending that it is in the frame of good, right? In the frame of good. That is where, for example, the Dhamma. Some of us use the Dhamma as a knife and a sword, right? and we sometimes stab people with it and also yank it around, right? We use, in that way, we use our sila. You drink, I don't drink, I never drunk. You know, see, heard these things? You drink, I don't drink, I never drink. Oh, you do other things on poor day, I only take sila on poor days. This is, the positive and negative. How do you save yourself? How do you save yourself? It seems that is why there is no running away from the mind. So you trying to physically, yes, you trying to physically do something is seen on a weaker platform when compared to an action which is actually with wisdom. Do you get it? That is why your practice should not be about the temple. Your practice should not be about the sila or the drinking or the drugs or whatever it is. It should always be about the wisdom. Your motivations, because I'm speaking to all of you, you all have been with me, some of you for years, but others, we've been together meditating through almost 6 months now. You all are not basic people. So I'm telling you this, right? For basic people, of course, I would say, start going to the temple and, give a dana, get used to sort of doing, doing the charitras and all of that. But you all are now beyond that in a great sense, because we have been talking the Dhamma and all of these things. You need the hardcore thing. The hardcore thing is stop pretending. Like, stop pretending. Give your full attention to not the actions, but actually to what drives those actions. Right? What drives those actions? That is the wisdom. Because you see, anything that you do, whether you put your photo on the poster or not, you're caught in it. Whether you go to Sila or not, you're caught in it. Whether you do drink or not drink, you're caught in it. You see, somehow ego has got into you. Why that has become possible for the ego is because your goal was not nibbana, it was not drinking. Your goal was not nibbana, it was just taking the precepts to be a good Buddhist. Your goal was not nibbana, it was just to do a bit of merit. Your goal was not nibbana, it was your bhavanga citta, where am I going to die and go? That is why it was not co-current with the Dhamma. That is what this sutta is telling. So you attaching yourself, you telling yourself that this is the prime example is not really Dhamma. At least the Dhamma that would take you to Nibbana. Of course, Sinhalese culture, Buddhist culture, yes, good for you. Right? But that culture is not going to give you Nibbana. This path should be treaded on with wisdom. What are your motivations? Let your motivations be not death. Let your motivations be not being a good Buddhist. Let your motivations be not being a good cultured person. But let your motivations be enlightenment, Nibbana. That is the only way that we take the horse, or sort of we get hold of the steering wheel of our life, where we exactly know what we are doing. Because in that moment of mind, it's Nibbana, isn't it? It's Nibbana, it's enlightenment. You will then not want to compare yourself with other people. You will not want to compare yourself with things that other people are doing and you are doing. Because moment to moment, it's going to be about living with the Dhamma in the present moment. This is not to say, again, this present moment awareness, right? This present moment awareness, I have to tell you, it has been very difficult for me to see anyone who has ever lived in present moment awareness. In the way that we have been taught in Buddhism, let me be completely honest with you. I have up to this day 15 years being a Buddhist, 10 years being a monk, I have not seen one person with 100% present moment awareness. No one, including Pauk Sayadaw. I have not seen anyone. Why? I've thought about it. Why? Because it is not something that you could easily do without attaining enlightenment. Present moment awareness, I believe, is not what we see it in terms of a arahant. That is what we know. That is what we have been taught. But present moment awareness, the being having Dhamma in each and every moment, is a better translation of present moment awareness. Having Dhamma in each and every moment, that I have seen. That I have seen. I have not seen a person having present moment awareness. Each and every moment, in the most senior of monks, I have not seen. But having Dhamma in each and every moment I have, and they have been lovely. They have been absolutely lovely people to be around. But people who try to live with present moment awareness each and every moment, not very nice people at all, actually. To be very frankly honest with you. People who have been completely fixated on meditating 24 hours a day, very, very bland people to hang around with. Not very exciting people to be around. But people I have seen who live with Dhamma each and every moment. Now, that is a beautiful chemistry of being. I believe that it is actually when you are in Dhamma, each and every moment, your guna is, you're never going to fall down. You are never going to fall down. Let every moment be a moment that is good for you and good for another person. When you are upset, which is usually normal, know the reason. That's where the wisdom kicks in. Know that you are upset, that you are going to react. Be apologetic about it. Move on. Apologize when you have to and move on. That is something we are trying to, don't you think? Right? A lot of you have been Buddhist than the complete tenure of my life, right? Probably you were trying to attain to this present moment awareness for more than the period of my whole lifetime. Yet we find it very difficult to really see a person who has been able to do it. Why is that? Because it is completely impossible. Remember, I told you, some of you, not all of you, at Park, we have our meditation um, kamathana, the advice that we are given from the guru, Swami Mahansa, or the teacher, right, is done in a hall, and we have different groups coming in and going, right? And there were a couple of monks and nuns who were, whilst we were getting very basic kamathana or meditation instructions, there were some others who we would see and hear getting kamathana from Pauk Sayadaw, from other teachers, for some who had attained to stream entry and was going towards once returner, anagami. And then we had some who were once returners and going on to non-returners, right? Now, these people, I remember, right now, completely shocked, by the way, when I first sort of, oh my gosh, I could never imagine this person to be such a person, And of course, it is not like they are coming to the teacher and telling, oh, Aggi Hamasmo Lokasa, it's not something like that. It is not something like that where he says, I have broken the house. It's not something like that. He is basically like one of us, where he's saying, these are my experiences. And the teacher knows, like, this is the state according to what is said. So I remember, one of these monks, he was he was the monk who would usually, on the route that we have to the meditation hall, he would be sort of sweeping the sort of the forest platform, rather some feet above the walking path that we had, right? So we would see him every day. He would be a common way. He would be doing some sort, and he was completely always with smiles, right? Very sort of, very. Um, he was very active in a way that he was a very pleasant person. He was very nice to be around, and he was always someone that we would sort of sometimes, if we get special treats or something, we would give it to him or something, and we would usually do that, right? And these people were like normal people, but very happy people, right? Very happy people. But when we sort of see what I have seen, because our kamatanas are often in one hall and such, the grumpy ones who are sort of completely asphyxiated on, like, they're very, very strongly into, they want it so bad, but it's not coming. And you can see it in the personality. They're very grumpy. You can't walk up to them and just say, you feel like there's a barrier of some sort that you see in a person who's trying to struggle with themselves, struggling to get there. Look here, in this Dhamma, with every sutta that we have read, hasn't it been somewhat like, opening a door of your heart, like Ajahn Brahm says in his book? It has always been something which like sheds a old skin, something which enlightens you, something which tells you to really relax and just focus on your qualities and your gunas. That is what each and every sutta that we have gone through has told us. The Brahmajala Sutta told us to get rid of, stop thinking that you know everything, start knowing that there is a world beyond what your mind holds. There are smarter people in the world. There are more intelligent people in the world. There are things in the world that you have not seen, right? Again, telling you to shed something. All the sutras that we are, even the most basic Metta Sutta itself, again tells you a similar story. Let go of your anger, have metta towards all beings. Such a lovely outlook. Be open, don't be afraid. These are all beings who suffer, beings who are happy. Let us have metta towards all of these beings. Like what? Like how? Like a mother would protect one's own child. Just think about your own child, right? Think about your own child, how you protect. Like that, try to pervade that into, look at that. And what are we doing? We are making ourselves, in putting ourselves into cocoons, into structures, in more into sort of really sort of constricting ourselves, choking ourselves, and we are still not getting it. Relax. Let wisdom lead the path, not anything else. Don't think that just because you can't give a dana, you will be going to hell, because that is actually the way we have been taught, isn't it? That is the way that we have been taught. Break apart. But you see, dana is important. Now, these days, something I must tell you, something that I hate seeing these days is the Katina Pinkamers, right? I must be very honest with you. I get very angry seeing all these Katina Pinkamers going on. People are dying all around the world. And you're spending 3,000, 5,000 pounds on decorating. Please go and give that money. Help the Sri Lankan families. Help the Sri Lankan students who don't have anything to eat. What are we doing? Your decorations doesn't mean anything to the Buddha right now. Your decorations do not mean anything to the Buddha right now. What are we doing? What are these temples doing really? It makes me absolutely frustrated that even in a time like this, I personally send money to about 4 students, right? For them to have their daily meals, because, their families are not wealthy. What are they going to eat? Just, some of them just eat one meal and drink water and sleep. I send money to students. We have no kathina. People have told me, okay, let's do even the rope. No, I said, not even the rope. Why do I need a rope? I don't need another rope. Not even a rope. We are not going to do any of that. This is a world pandemic. We need to do stuff to help other people. I don't need anything. This is the Dhamma, isn't it? That is the Dhamma. What is the Dhamma oils? We are sticking on to cultures and traditions. For 2,500 years, we have been doing it. We can't break it. Just what nonsense is that? What nonsense is that? We have to be Buddhists, leading with wisdom. Leading with wisdom. Or else our practice, this is of no use. This is of no use. If we are people living in a community, right? If we are people living in a community, when I have too much of dana, there are some homeless people, I pack the lunches and go and give it to them at night, right? I don't feel like now, if we are Buddhists, if we have things to do, the reason that all of you have food on your tables is because you have given in your past. The reason that, for example, I have so much of people who care about me and everything is taken care for me is because I have given and taken care of people in the past. We must take care of people in our society. At least if you don't want to take care of the adults, take care of the children. And what are we doing? Decorations. 60 Buddhas along the lines of the walls of the temples. What nonsense. 60, you put 60 Buddhas, what nonsense are you doing? 3,000 pounds for the decorations. This is not Dhamma. This is entirely not Dhamma. We are in this, we are all Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are Bodhisattva, enlightenment seekers. Are these what enlightenment seekers do? This is not what enlightenment seekers do. What disgrace to the word of Bodhisattvas is this? This is what we must realize in our practice, right? This is what we must realize in the practice. We must be active. We must take care of our community, take care of our people. That is what true metta is. Remember, Bhante Panyasopan said, yes, we do metta bhavana, right? But when it actually comes to giving something, no, we don't have money. But metta bhavana, siyulu satyo nidukvetva, siyulu satyo nidukvetva. That is the limit and boundary to your metta. That is the limit and boundary to your metta. Some yes, that is the reality of some. That is what we must break across. We know living in these countries out of Sri Lanka, there are class of people who are absolutely to our knife, to our throats with knife, waiting until we do a mistake. That is not Dhamma. But there is no necessity to talk about it. That is human fault, human weakness. But at least in a time like this, we must try to help people out. Especially the temples. I completely disagree with the Asapur. The moment COVID-19 hit, before COVID-19 hit, all the monks packed their bags and left back to Sri Lanka. Why? No one to serve the dana. My gosh. No one to serve the dana, so you left your community and you went to Sri Lanka? I was taking phone calls till 12 o'clock, people crying. People saying, oh, I can't live with my husband. I was taking phone calls to these people, comforting these people. Till midnight sometimes, talking to people. These people are not related to me. These people haven't given me anything. Why? Because I'm a monk. This is my duty. And more than, not because I'm a monk, because of that compassion. That is what you do. That is what a bodhisattva does. This is what we must do for our community, right? That letting go aspect. Even the cultures and traditions, there comes when you must decide where you should stop. So let wisdom lead you rather than all of these other practices which are absolutely against the Dhamma. Absolutely against the Dhamma. Right? Absolutely against the Dhamma. Okay. All right. Thank you for listening to my rant. Thank you for listening to my rant. I had to get it out of it.
Can I say something?
Bante, that was really a lovely thing to say about this Katina Pinkamas. So happy to hear this from you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Bante.
I was actually not trying to please anyone. It was just seeing these things happening. And in the middle of this world pandemic, especially knowing so many people not having proper food to eat, especially the students who have come to this country from poor families, right? Suffering, it's sad, it's absolutely sad. Anyways, so with regards to the sutta, do we have any questions, or shall we continue next week?
Okay.
All right. So then we will continue. I will see you all on Saturday. Satipatthana course on starting on the 1st, that is Sunday.
That's one there.
Take care, and I will see you. Remember, Bante Yogavacha Rahula is the one who is opening the session on Sunday. He will be speaking on Venerable Jnanadeepa's life, and then continuing on to
I think it's 1 to 3.
Kayanapasana. Right? Yes, Devika.
1 to 3, Bante.
I was specifically wanting to check on that, the exact time, so that I could call in. Now, this weekend, our time is being changed.
Yeah. Okay. When
So,
is it being changed?
yes, this weekend, they'll be putting 1 hour back. So it will be the same.
Okay. Okay.
So, Bante, once again, can you repeat that for me?
So it is so it's 1 to 3
1
p.m.
to 3.
British time. I will send out
Alright.
the email. I will send out the email by tonight.
I told you 1 to 3 p.m.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mama.
Take care. Then
Good afternoon, Swaminatha.
I will see you on Saturday. Take care.
Okay. Good
And good night.
night.